The 2024 motorsports season will soon be underway for our favorite racing series, but where are they at now and what do you need to know before we start watching? With Formula One set to return in late February with P1 scheduled for the 29th, the only real headlines for the new season is the slightly revised order with which the calendar will roll out. The most notable change being Suzuka occurring on the 7th of April. This is mainly to try to attempt to reduce the carbon footprint of the series as they travel between races. However, this is still the most damaging part when looking at environmental impact, not the cars themselves. Though Red Bull arguably made one of the best Formula One cars last year with the RB19, don't be deceived when it comes to the potential competitiveness of the field in 2024. As we go into the third year of the wind tunnel concessions, the field will slowly be getting closer and closer, with the total field spread at the Brazilian Grand Prix just being over 0.8 of a second between all 20 cars. Even though it would be optimistic to think that we'll have an end to the Red Bull dominance before the start of the 2026 rule changes, the advantage is almost certain to dwindle. With teams like McLaren massively catching up throughout 2023, winning the Qatar sprint race being the peak of it all, as well as a double podium at Suzuka, all eyes will be on the McLaren outfit as they got P4 in the Constructors, which is one more than they did in 2022. An internal shift at Haas as Günther Steiner has left the Formula One team after overseeing the operation for owner Gene Haas ever since it came to be in 2016. So 8th season as a team boss is certainly not a bad thing, although of course he's certainly made some questionable decisions throughout his tenure, such as the allocation of rich energy, the hiring of a certain Russian in 2021, along with the difficulty that the team tend to have in sustaining a consistent amount of pace throughout a whole season, as when they'll look fast in the first couple of rounds and then they always tail off looking at their most recent history. So with the appointment of a new team principal in 2024, we'll see if their fortune changes. Formula 2 has been using the same Dallara chassis as well as the Mechachrome V6 power units ever since the 2018 season, and after 6 years of it providing the best possible talent to Formula 1, these cars will make way for the brand new chassis in 2024. First being tested by Tatiana Calderon in July, the teams will receive their first chassis in December, with the second coming in mid-January. The cars have been modified to encourage further wheel-to-wheel racing, as well as continuing to run on their 55% biofuel used throughout last year, with the target to be running on 100% biofuel by the end of 2026. And talking about the grid for 2024, we have the previous Super Formula champs, we have Formula 3 champ and the runner-up to Formula 3 joining the Formula 2 grid for 2024, massively bolstering the already stupidly competitive grid for 2024. But as always, we have the issue of paid drivers in Formula 2. Our next favorite open wheel championship, Indycar. The key thing about Indycar in 2024 is the long-awaited hybrid power units that have been in development since seemingly forever will finally make their debut at some point within the 2024 Indycar season after the Indy 500. The current V6 2.2-liter power units have been in use for 12.5 seasons by the time the hybrid pre-use come into use. It'll be interesting to see how the hybrid power unit is able to recharge during oval rounds, remembering that how the MGU usually recharges on the brakes, of which especially at races like the Indy 500, not a lot of brakes are used at that point. But remember, IndyCar isn't entirely taking the same route as Formula 1 did. When Formula 1 moved to hybrid power, the engine displacement also reduced in size, whereas the IndyCar series will have the same engine size, but now with the addition of hybrid power and slightly reduced weight around the car like the aeroscreen, bell housing, and gearbox. Possibly the biggest change to the racing will now be the fact that drivers will have unlimited push-to-pass throughout a race, seeing as the energy is now generated through the hybrid PU. Now let's actually get to the teams and calendar for 2024. The most controversial one being Callum Ilott making way for Roman Grosjean at Jungos Hollinger Racing, despite Roman quite noticeably underperforming within his time in the DHL Andretti car. As well as taking on the 2022 Indy 500 champ Marcus Ericsson, Chip Ganassi Racing will now extend its team to 5 cars, given Simpson being a full-time driver in 2024, although no number for this new entry has yet to be confirmed. Remember, in US Motorsports in particular, the number aligns with the car, not the driver, unlike Formula 1. Marcus Armstrong will be remaining with Chip Ganassi Racing, and that's super interesting, because he'll be doing every single round. Previously, he shared the car with Takuma Sato, with the Japanese driver taking over during oval rounds, leaving the road and street courses to Marcus. We also have the likes of Indy Next champion Christian Rasmussen making his way into Ed Carpenter Racing, and will race a third entry in the Indianapolis 500 for the same team. Petro Fittipaldi will race RL's 30 car alongside Yuri Vips, maintaining a contract with the team for a possible third outing at select events. Felix Rosenquist will be driving in place of the recovery Simon Pagino, so he can focus on recovering from injuries sustained by his crash at Mid-Ohio last year, but this will be a permanent replacement. Meyer Shank Racing will also be replacing Helio Castroneves in the 66 car with Tom Blomqvist, although Castroneves will return for the Indy 500 in the third Meyer Shank car. The last two movements include David Malukas moving into Rosenquist's seat at McLaren, And Stingway Rob, yes, that is his real legal name that we all love, taking over at AJ Foyt Racing in place of Benjamin Peterson. Although there are any new rounds per se, we'll get to that, in Indycar there are a couple of changes, mainly being the slots for Laguna Seca being swapped with the street race in Nashville. And on the topic of Nashville, the layout is being dramatically changed for 2024 and onwards. The Texas round that has been on the schedule since 1997 will not return in 2024, as well as the exclusive Thermal Club weekend not being in the points round this year. America's most popular motorsport, NASCAR. Probably the most important aspect of NASCAR in 2024 is an update in the model of the Fords, going from their 6th generation Mustang to the 2024 Ford Mustang Dark Horse, likely being triggered after a series of poor races going from rounds 6 to 14 without a win. The calendar in 2024 is quite the same in 2023. So let's concentrate on the driver changes, with which there's quite a few. The main one perhaps being Josh Berry replacing the retired Kevin Harvick after impressing through a series of rounds where he filled in for the injured Chase Elliott, and managing top 10 finishes despite only being a reserve. So even though he will be quite in a different car this year, things are looking good for the number 4. Amarillo will leave the Cup Series along with his sponsor for his career, Smithfield Foods, and the number 10 will now be occupied by Noah Gragson. 2 more full-time rookies in Zane Smith and Carson Hocevar will be piloting the 71 and the 77 Chevrolets, replacing the outgoing Ty Dillon from the 77, and the newly acquired 71 charter from Live Fast Motorsports will now instead run a part-time schedule. Along with the most anticipated part-time racer in the NASCAR series, racing in all 3, Shane Van Gisbergen. This follows the 2nd place in 2023 V8 Supercars Championship, and who can forget the debut win around the streets of Chicago. And honestly, one of my personal favorites from last year, hopefully a great repeat in 2024. And I saved the worst for last, somewhat annoyingly being reintroduced. We now have stage cautions permanently at the road course events in 2024. After returning late in 2023, the already dividing stage system, having been present on the oval races since 2016, will now be again situated for every single event, and not my favorite. And lastly, my favorite, Hypercars. In 2024, we enter the 3rd year of the golden era of Hypercars, with Lamborghini, Alpine, and Isotta Franchischini now having their Hypercars join the fold at some point throughout the new season. With a heavily revised calendar that now includes Imola, Sao Paulo, and Coda, there are more opportunities for these monsters to get unleashed against one another. However, frustratingly, a lot of these hypercars stay exclusive to certain race series. Toyota, Ferrari, Isotta, Alpine, and Peugeot are staying exclusively to the World Endurance Championship, whilst Acura will be staying exclusive to IMSA. BMW, Porsche, Cadillac, Lamborghini will compete in both, so we can get a direct benchmark as to how these hypercars would compete with one another. Unfortunately, however, Glickenhaus and Vanwell no longer will be producing hypercar programs, although Vanwell's only time being shown on television was usually in the wall. The next part to remember is that I wouldn't have astronomical hopes for the new hypercars just yet anyway, seeing as they are a season or more in development behind their direct rivals. Although BOP or Balance of Performance might even the field a lot, it doesn't make it totally even. I mean, just look at Vanwell. And the Peugeot Hypercar has a new spoiler, so I guess that's cool. Regardless of what kind of racing you're looking forward to in 2024, make sure to hit that subscribe button so I can keep you up to date with all the news and some educational stuff coming up for the motorsports season.